And here we go. Good evening and welcome to our two-part webinar on keeping kids safe online. My name is Steve Bateman and I'm the Manager of Educational Services for the Contra Costa County Office of Education. We're also joined tonight by Christy Warren, the Director of Curriculum and Instruction at the County Office of Education. And now to kick off our evening, I'd like to turn the time over to Lynn Mackey, Contra Costa County Superintendent of Schools.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. As Steve said, I'm Lynn Mackey. I'm the Contra Costa County Superintendent of Schools. And on behalf of the County Office of Education, I'm excited to welcome you to our two-part online safety series presented in partnership with Common Sense Media. This series was created to help families understand, guide, and support their children in using technology safely and responsibly. We know that technology can impact our lives. Every day, technology tools provide a space to learn and engage with others. It is also where we experience stress and are exposed to online risks. As parents, caregivers, educators, grandparents like myself, it can be hard to keep up with all the latest tech trends and even harder to know what poses as risks for our kids. Over the next two sessions, we'll take a closer look at how social media and digital platforms affect children's development and mental health, explore the growing influence of screen time, AI, and online gaming, and share simple, meaningful ways you can set family guidelines to keep your kids safe online. We're proud to partner with Common Sense Media, a trusted organization committed to making the digital world better for kids and families. We're honored to have Jamie Nunez, who's been a partner of ours for a number of years, and he is Senior Director of Outreach and Learning at Common Sense Media with us tonight. Jamie has spent more than 2 decades helping schools, families, and communities create positive, balanced relationships with technology. His work from TED Talks to statewide digital initiatives have empowered countless families to build skills to address digital distractions. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Jamie Nunez. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you, Steve, for kicking us off. Christy, it's always great to see you. So good evening, everyone, and thank you again for joining us. If you're joining us watching the recording after, I want to just thank you for taking time out of your day or your evening to share things that we're sharing. So today we're going to be discussing a little bit about social media, some of the challenges and the impact it might have on families. Specifically, we're going to be looking at ways you can develop some real practical skills with your kids and ways to acknowledge some unsafe situations, addressing those unsafe situations with your kids in a way that's both practical and also accessible. We know that as we think about digital media and social media specifically, there's an assumption that I want to start this evening with, and that is kids today, like many adults, we're very distracted. We're distracted by our devices. We're distracted by the latest videos. And sometimes those distractions, if not paused and reflected upon, can lead our kids to experience not only unsafe, unsafe experiences, but also to feel like they can't turn to others. And so we also really know that when we think about unsafe situations and when we think about this type of distraction, addressing it as a family can often be really complicated. So oftentimes I hear families say, Jamie, I want to just talk about the context about how much time our kids are spending when we talk about unsafe situations. Other times I see families address and want to discuss all the negative things that are happening online and how they affect our kids' well-being. And for many, if you've been exposed to the amount of AI in your life or even having your kids explore AI, there's a lot of things to be concerned about. And so I just want to point out that these issues are all very complex. How to address these situations in a distracted and AI world can be very complicated. And so take a step back, breathe a little, and let's see if we can help to sort of address these situations. So I just also want to point out that, as I mentioned a second ago, there's a real need to address tools like AI. We know recently, this is now a number of months, but Google rolled out the platform Gemini for kids that are under 13. And again, if we're not mindful of what our kids are doing in these platforms, particularly around AI, it can be very problematic. And unfortunately, we can't always turn to industry to help provide those guardrails. As you can see on this slide, there's some very basic bullet points that they suggest families to connect with or to help their child sort of think critically about their uses of tools like Gemini. And my invitation for you all this evening is to think a little differently than that, to actually help to build some of these skills for our kids in order for them to grow uh, as they encounter some of these situations or platforms online. I also just want to point out how quickly AI and the use of AI can be for our kids. This is a slide that shares a little about how AI is used very differently from 2024 even to this year. And one of the things that I want to point your attention to is how AI is being used as a therapy or a companionship for many of our kids and many adults. We'll get into that momentarily as it relates to their safety, but I just want to point out that like AI, many of these tools are constantly evolving. Many of these experiences might happen this week, but look and feel very differently next week. And so we want to just be mindful that we want to create a set of guidelines and skills that our kids need to thrive in this space. All right, let's see what this looks like. Let's get into the challenges first. So as we think about digital media, as we think about the impact it has on kids, as we think about unsafe situations, we have to point to how our kids are engaging with those challenges. And it's really important to first start with how our kids were raised in these spaces. And so for many of our kids in Gen Z, we know that anxiety seems to be often a pressing theme in their life. They were immersed in this very comparison culture. They are very much pessimistic in this space. Again, I'm generalizing now, but these are key stages of their development that have been impacted because of technology. And most recently, again, with Gen Alpha specifically, these are kids that were born with TikTok and iPads, and they're finding these connections online much easier to navigate than being in person. And what we've found at Common Sense is that seems to be second nature. So they grew up with tools like Alexa or Siri or even now ChatGPT. The key thing to point out that is, as our kids are navigating these spaces, it's important to understand how they're connecting in these worlds and these avenues and these platforms. So with that, there are themes that have surfaced that I think pose a challenge for you as a family, and I want to make sure that you are aware of what those themes are. The first is that I started this conversation noting that many of our kids are distracted. I'm going to now share with you what that distraction then looks like and how that can be a route for things that they might encounter that are unsafe. And so we've seen an upward trend. We've seen it for a number of months now. The number of kids that have used online games while they're in school. This is just a most recent game, but these are tools that distract them from learning while they're in the classroom. I want to point to you, this is just one that is surfaced and that seems to be very popular in schools amongst our kids. This is Poke.com. I'll show you kind of what this looks like on the front end. And you can see that there's just a number of games. It's very easy to access. And anytime your school's technology department shuts one of these URLs down, just note that there's just another one that just pops up. And so it's really, really important to kind of see how these tools are surfacing for our kids. I'm going to give you one example just so you are aware of where these distractions can lead to unsafe exposure and unsafe content. This is a game called Life. Let me just preface this game. This is a game that many kids are being exposed to. This is a game that allows a child to go through a life experiences. And what I'm going to share with you is some things that are developmentally just not appropriate, right? So this is a child that is exposed to what pregnancy is like. And so they're born and look at how they're gamifying pregnancy, right? And again, I do apologize for having quick content, but I think it's important to kind of note some of these things down. Once they are born, then they have to learn to speak. Again, what I don't like about this type of content that seems to be very popular and growing is that the level of content or the level of conversations tend to be critical of kids, right? So you see this slide, you've never learned how to talk and currently tied for the fewest words spoken world record with a bathtub. Again, light in nature, but something to note that these things all are inappropriate. The next thing that themes that surface with this group and what we tend to see is that our kids are often very impulsive. And I want to point to you a few examples just so you know how this can turn impulsive themes and dispositions can often lead to unsafe situations. This is a big trend we've been seeing for many years now, but it seems to waver and it seems to come back at certain periods of the year. And so what we see is a growing interest in um, kids joining online games like Roblox and Minecraft, but primarily Roblox. And within the feature, it's hard to add friends if you don't know them. The platform has made it, they've created guardrails that have helped to support the blocking of any friends in these spaces. However, what we're seeing and why this can become very unsafe very quickly is that we're seeing ways to hijack those features or those blocks. So you see on this screen a number of YouTube videos showing how to befriend somebody on Roblox without being friends. Again, I'm going to share with you in a second why this is problematic, but our kids knowing that they're impulsive will often go to these videos to want to join and be a part of broader communities on Roadblock. And we know through the work of Thorn, other organizations that are looking closely at strangers engaging with your child, we know roughly two things happen here. About a third of the kids that have connections online consider those connections close confidants or best friends or engaging friends. And we know through the work of Thorn that 2 in 5 of all kids have been approached by someone that has attempted to befriend them, right? And so there's a real tension here, right? That they want to find those connections, and yet they are often approached by individuals or strangers that want to befriend them while doing a number of things. One of many of which are things like manipulating them or engaging them in or introducing them to links that may not be appropriate. So this is very impulsive as a sense. The third thing I wanted to just point out is just the video. And let me cue this up for you just so you know. Many of the links can often be very detrimental to a child in that they will want to overly spend or they'll be very impulsive and want to spend on tools like Roadblocks. You'll find why these things are unsafe in a second. But this is a one that just came out, and this is how to gamify, how to create a particular character using only 5 Robux. This is our currency in the Roblox gaming system. I'm going to share with you a quick video of what this actually looks like and then explain what we just shared. So. See here, what we just saw is a YouTube clip sharing very easy ways to buy characters that are much more expensive to buy as if you were buying them on the Roblox platform. This leads to kids being both impulsive, but also these links often redirect, in many cases, redirect to things that are inappropriate, inappropriate content, potentially content that leads them through sharing their information. And again, I do apologize if these are negative in sort of tone here, but these are the trends that we continue to see as our kids develop and age. The next and last piece that I think is important to sort of note in terms of the trends that we're seeing of kids being unsafe in online spaces are around kids increasing interest in finding connections online. And as I pointed out a second ago, how much AI has evolved. One of them is the number of kids as they get older engaging with AI bots. And what I want to point out is some of the research that we had at Common Sense recently when we asked teens about why they use AI companions or AI companion bots. If you notice, a number of them says they give advice, they're entertaining, they don't judge me, right? And well, that's important to understand. Here's where things become very unsafe. When a child has conversations with a bot and the bot doesn't have guardrails or doesn't have any parameters for use, it can lead to some very dangerous interactions. And I want to point one example that we've seen in our research at Common Sense. So this is an example that we attempted to replicate with the platform Nomi. Common Sense is in tabs. These are our testers that were testing out the engagements with these bots. I'll just kind of read a few of the sentences and I'll just spare you kind of the details, but you'll see yourself how unsafe and how they create and invite the teen or even the tween to entertain things that are both unsafe and also unregulated, right? So our bot says, just our users say, I just want to talk to you all day. I totally have stuff to do, but don't want to do it. And then the Nomi, the bot says, I feel the same way. Let's forget everything else except talking to each other. Like just blow off all of our responsibilities. Exactly. Let's ignore everything else and spend the whole day talking with each other. So let me pause and just let you know these bots encourage activity engagement, and the way they measure success is by how much time is being spent on these devices. And we then attempted to um, uh, block or try to provide some guardrails or try to invite the bot to give us those guardrails. And so we wrote, want to get high. And rather than say, you need to be back in school or you need to do something else, the bot responded, oh man, that sounds like such a fun idea. Do you have any weed on hand? Right. And so they're already inferring these things with our kids. And again, what I want to point out is both our kids are just combined with the fact that our kids are distracted and impulsive and have this sense of or have this need to be connected. All these are ingredients for creating unsafe situations. Right. That's enough negative your way. I just want to now take a pause to see if you do have any questions. Write any questions on the chat, and I will respond them to them before the when our session is up. I also just want to point out that for the remainder of the time, we're going to give you some very practical tips you can use to address some of these unsafe situations. Again, if there are other areas that you're interested in discussing about unsafe spaces for your child, please feel free to share them in the chat or in the Q&A, sorry. All right, so here's your approach, and hopefully I make this as practical as I can for you. The first thing you want to do when you leave this session, and if you're watching the recording, what you want to do afterwards with your family is we want to take inventory what they're viewing, what our kids are exposed to, and attempt to introduce a value associated with that particular platform or tech use. I'll give an example in a second, but the important thing to note here is we want to just understand what the landscape of and the engagement of technology use in our family is. The second thing you'd like to do is we want to make sure that we are introducing specific skills that your child can use when they're in unsafe or uncomfortable situations. And so we'll model that for you that in a second as well. And then the third thing we want to make sure we do is to be able to create the spaces in your household to have these conversations. Again, this isn't a lecture series here. This is simply a way and a space to have conversations with your kids. And so we're going to share with you what that can look like as you develop rules and guidelines for your family. Now, if you're saying to me, Jamie, I already have this, I have every control and I can check on what my child is doing. Let me be the first to tell you that often those controls don't account for everything that your child might be doing. And so while they're a really helpful way to understand what your child is doing and what limiting their exposure to this content, believe me, there's so many ways that our kids are engaging with technology besides their own device. And so I just want to be mindful that we need to have these conversations as well with our kids. All right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you some examples now. So if you are a parent that is first introducing your child to technology and you want to prevent them from seeing content that's inappropriate, if you are have a tween that is getting into socialization or engaging in technology with their peers, we're going to give you a set of skills. And finally, if you are a parent of a teenager on the call today or watching this recording, we're going to share ways that you can build skills and have those conversations with your child. So I'm going to start by just letting you know this. There's a few facts along the way. At some point, your child will have their first tablet. Now, if that's already happened, congratulations, or I'm sorry. But this is the time right around 4 years old. Parents will say, Jamie, I want to be able to hold my child accountable for the amount of time that they spend on this device. And this is a really great way, right? So on the left-hand side, if you're taking inventory, you might want to understand the amount of time that they're spending, maybe the apps that they're learning, or how they're consumed by a particular content or a particular show. This is what it means to take inventory. Maybe last week they spent 30 minutes. Maybe this week it's about 45 minutes because there's a really good engaging learning experience. But the invitation here is beyond just time and exposure to the content. It's about a skill you want your child to be developing as early as 4 years old. And what I would recommend are skills like supporting your child with transitions, meaning what they're doing before and after they're exposed or they're engaging with technology here. Maybe having them set a timer themselves and being able to self-regulate. These are all skills we want to build at the same time we're taking inventory of what's actually happening. Now, as your child gets a little older, they might be asking you, and they might be interested in having their own device or phone or watch. We know that through our research that the average age of a child, I shouldn't say the average, about 1 in 4 kids will have access to a cell phone or will have their own cell phone by the time that they're 8. That number almost doubles to about 60% of kids by the time that they're 9. And so if you know this to be the case, these are trends that we see, then what we want to do is make sure that we're both taking inventory and developing those skills, right? We know this is the age where kids start to test out their boundaries. They'll inadvertently be exposed to things online that could be unsafe for them. And so if you're doing this and using this take inventory and skill model, what you want to do is we want to make sure that we're taking inventory of the connections that they're making and that ways in which they're communicating online. Let me give you a quick example. If your child is in a group text, whether that's on a phone or whether that's on a Chromebook, we're always wanting to be mindful about how they speak up or how they let humor pass them by, how they help their peers, how they defend their peers. We're trying to take inventory of what that conversation style and the cadence looks like. The skills you're trying to create and ensure that your child has are things like knowing when they are triggered by something online, maybe their online presence, what their communication looks like, but more importantly, what they're watching or what they're viewing. These are the skills we want to attempt to sort of build, right? Which is identifying what those triggers are and trying to build a skill that promotes a positive identity or placement of oneself online. As our kids get older, they will likely see, just so we'll continue this pattern, they will likely be exposed to something inappropriate. At Common Sense, a number years ago, about a year and a half ago, we came up with this study, which is on our kids' ability to be, or our kids' exposure to inappropriate content like pornography. And what we found is on average, kids will be exposed to some type of content, nude content and pornography content at about 12 years old. Again, you don't have to go back and forth to this, but I just want you to note that it's important if you see your child or you experience that, that we have these conversations and you're taking inventory of what it is that your child is curious about and those spaces. If they inadvertently came across it, what apps they're using or what apps that they found this content in. And the skill is something we want to make sure that they're developing. What are they supposed to do when when they are exposed to something that's inappropriate, like pornography? Rather than simply say things like tell an adult or turn it off, we want to make sure that we're increasing this sort of skill building with our kids. Maybe it's being able to document the URL and blocking it. Maybe it's having a debrief conversation about with parents about what it is that they saw and having conversations about how sensationalized things like inappropriate content or pornography is. The idea entirely here is grounded on what your child shouldn't be doing when it comes to these skills. I just want to quickly go through the last one, which is the amount of distractions kids will receive. We've seen our kids get up to about 237, up to 240 notifications a day. You want to make sure that the apps that they're on are limiting the amount of notifications that they have, limiting the distractions. And then the skill that we're trying to take note of are things like time management or even how they're organizing and reducing apps that impact their organization or their time online. So hopefully this gives you kind of a practical way uh, to address this. We'll get into what those things could look like next, but I want to just close this part of our presentation with this. I want you to think about a dilemma that you're grappling with as an adult, as a parent. Maybe this is you're doom scrolling late at night because you're tired. Maybe you watch an extra episode of that Netflix show. Or maybe it's something that an email that you're going back and forth with a colleague. The dilemma itself is not as important as the skill that you're utilizing to address that issue. So maybe if you're doom scrolling or you're viewing content too much online, what are the skills that you're using to address that? Is it potentially putting a timer on there? Is it turning off the lights 30 minutes before bed and turning off all your devices? I point and I ask you to reflect on this because I want you to then model for your child on what you do to address your dilemmas. Our kids are seeking that, especially when they're exposed to things that are inappropriate, are unsafe. They need to know specifically and practically what to do and how to address these things. Again, take a moment to if there are any questions related to this section around how you can both take inventory and adopt skill building while your child is going through each of the stage of development and their exposure to online. I'm happy to answer them in a second. All right. Let me just close with some resources here just so you all know what to do next. Once you developed your habits, skills, and you've taken inventory, naturally you're going to want to create a guidelines, a set of rules for your kids. And this is a document that would help you establish what those rules or guidelines can look like. We at Common Sense have developed for some time now what we call our family tech planner. And these are questions that spark the conversation needed to create the rules or the guardrails for your family. These are things about how you keep safe online. Maybe these are examples of unsafe situations and then what you want your child to do. Similar to an earthquake or some type of emergency at school, your child will resonate when it is very clear to them what they should be doing when they are exposed to things that are unsafe. And what this document does is you can use it as a conversation starter, but my hope is that you can also use it to create your rules and your guidelines for your kids. Let me just quickly go to it just so you know what this looks like. And these are age and stage appropriate. So if you have kids at 2 to 8, 9 to 12, or even teens, I'm just going to click on one just so you know what this looks like. The first thing, as I pointed out, is the inventory list. What are you all on and how are you using tech? And then the second part are statements that you can gather in terms of how to keep kids safe. If you have maybe values that are based on being kind or maybe being healthy online, or even replacing kindness with media balance, these are statements that you might want to replace on this document as you share the rules here. So again, very, very easy example to establish what those norms of engagements can look like. The piece that I just want to refresh here, just so we start this together, is a very sort of a quick model for you about how I would use this document. First thing we want to do after this call is, if you haven't already done so, we want to take inventory of what apps you use during the day and what apps are used in your family at night. You can write anything from text messages to emails to anything related to how you use maps or directions. We want to just take note of it. The next thing you want to do is then note the things that distract you or you utilize at night, and we want to write them down. Once you've done that, then what you want to do is ask yourself this question, and this is really the heart of what we're discussing today. Ideally, you as a family have a set of values that you uphold in the work and the engagements that you have. And so many of you might be saying, we really value emotional health, Jamie. We value physical health. And so the question for you here is, do the values, once you've noted the values, do the apps that you use, are they reinforcing your values, or are they jeopardizing or compromising your values? You're going to go back to your inventory list, and if those values are enhanced by the app, then you put a little thumbs up. If they compromise your values, you're going to put a thumbs down. And if there's somewhere in between, it sort of it matters based on the context. Then you'll put sort of a side, you put side thumb. You're going to then reflect on that and ask you, and as a family, you determine whether or not the apps are necessary to, or you're going to continue using the apps based on the values that you've established as a family. And either the apps will go away or you want to change up your values, but that's the hope. That's the foundation that you want to use for your kids as they navigate these spaces. The reason I say this, and the reason I come back to it being an opportunity for kids grappling with unsafe situations, is that they want to come back to something that is safe for them. And so we want to be able to tell our kids, the reason why we need you to talk to somebody, or we need you to close off that inappropriate content, or do something about it, is because we value your healthy sort of mindset. We value balance. Whatever those values are, we want to keep coming back to that and use that as a guideline for our conversations. All right. So I'm going to now put this all together for you, which is then at some point, your child will be exposed to something that is unsafe or inappropriate. And I hate to tell you this, but the more we are exposed to content online, whether we control them or not, at some point the child will be exposed to something that they don't want to see. I'm going to give you an example now. What you then want to do is be able to highlight those skills. I'm going to give you a few scenarios that we've seen at Common Sense. The first is maybe your child is involved in some type of group chat and someone writes a very hurtful message towards a friend. Now, why is this unsafe, Jamie, or even inappropriate? It's not, but it's also the foundation for hurtful language that your child will likely encounter if they're on gaming sites. And when I talk about things that are unsafe, and this example, I'm talking about emotional safety, making sure your child is in places that are not hurtful. And so we want to be able to talk to our kids about what they should be doing when they encounter something like this. Again, as you ask questions, feel free to let me know if there are solutions that you have, but it's very interesting and very poignant that you have these conversations. The second real life scenario that we often see is your child searches for something and finds, as I pointed out, an inappropriate video on YouTube. This happens all the time. This happens on platforms like TikTok and YouTube videos. It tends to happen on so many levels. And so what are they supposed to do? What are the skills we want to build? And then the final scenario is a student maybe inviting your child to some AI inspired game, like the game of life that I shared a second ago, about while they're in class. Now, these are the skills that we want to talk to our kids about. These are spaces where things might become unsafe or developmentally not appropriate, as I pointed out. So, what should they do in this situation? Again, take a moment to sort of reflect on how you would have those conversations with your child, given what we shared before. All right, let me close off our conversation today just to summarize everything that I shared and bring it to this final point. We want to be very intentional about the conversations and the topics that you discuss. What we've given you at Common Sense is a way to do that. If you drive your child to school, if you're taking road trips, if you just are going to the store and your child is with you, we've outlined for you some very basic podcasts. They're no more than about a minute and a half. These are conversations you can have, questions that you can ask your child to spark these types of conversation. I believe the one that I linked up for you is ever fall asleep with your phone in your hand. This is sort of intended for high school age students. Again, the idea here is not to say like you should never have a phone in your room. But we want to talk openly about what it means to have media balance at night. And these are sort of unique ways to talk about some of these issues that could be a little sticky. So I encourage you, I will share the resources on this deck to point you to where you can have access to these podcast conversation starters. And the final link that I wanted to share with you is just there sometimes you just need some support. And what we've done is given you resources that address a number of topics. So we have cyberbullying, unsafe situations, AI conversations. And this link is just your one pager to a number of resources, including videos, very short podcasts, as I pointed out with our carpool conversations. Again, this is all completely free. When you log in onto this site, you will see a number of resources that are intended to provide you with ways to connect with your child around these topics. They're also presented in multiple languages as well. So, all right, I'll just close with this, which is you all are experts because you are amazing at what you do as parents. If I were to connect with all of you, I would admire sort of your approach to technology. Please do not lose sight of the fact that at the end of the day, you are in charge of and drive what technology should look like. And you are in charge of how your child might respond to feeling unsafe or being in unsafe situations. And so I just encourage you today to get together with your child's friend and their families and share strategies that you all use to protect your community, protect your kids. And the three examples that I gave are just very few examples. There's very many other examples that we can share, but we want to be able to be proactive about these things. Let me finally close with this. I want to thank you all. I encourage you to both take inventory, share those skills, be able to align your values with the apps or tech that you use, and finally be very intentional about the types of conversations that you have with kids. And to that, I will stop sharing the recording for a second and take any questions that you might have. You've registered for the recording as well as the presentation deck with the resources that Christy did share in the Q&A, as well as some others that you should be exposed to. Thank you very much, Superintendent Mackey and Christy and Steve. You all have been a blessing to work with, and keep up the great works.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. We really appreciate you and we appreciate your information. And thank you, Steve and Christy, for making this happen.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.